Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone. Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We're your hosts, Emily and Leanne from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Jen about her journey and her work in this space. Jen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Leanne.
So before we get into your story, we would love for you to introduce yourself quickly for our listeners.
Sure. My name is Jen. I am a mom to two boys, one in heaven and one in my arms. He is 2 years old currently. I am a wife to my husband of 4 years. I'm a daughter. I have amazing parents. I'm lucky to have all four of my parents. I'm sure they'll listen to this podcast. So shout out Helen, Mark, Sandy, Andy. I am very lucky to have an amazing family surrounding me, siblings. I have one sister. Eric has one sister, and they're both married. And our family looks really, really full and complete in my eyes. We are blessed in that way.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Hi, Jen's family. Thank you for listening.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to starting a family? Where did it all begin?
Sure. My family began, actually, I just mentioned that Eric and I have been married since 2022. Our first child, baby R, surprised us at our wedding. We found out we were 6 weeks pregnant at our wedding. So 2 weeks before my wedding was our positive pregnancy test. A total and complete shock. Not a planned pregnancy, but a very welcomed pregnancy. That was really uneventful. We were seen by a midwife who I love very much, all of my pregnancy. At one point at my anatomy scan, we were told that there were some abnormalities in baby R's umbilical cord, but it was a variation of normal, that everything would be okay. But because of this variation of normal, we would receive a higher level of monitoring than other moms, although not with MFM and not high risk, just additional scans with my midwife. And I felt decreased fetal movement at 37 weeks and 3 or 4 days. And I said to Eric, who I was very fortunate to have attended all of my prenatal care appointments with me. I always put an asterisk in there that I am privileged to not only attend all of my appointments by myself. There are mothers in this country that are choosing between work and attending their healthcare appointments. But not only did I get to go, but Eric also got to attend every single one of our appointments, even though we did have an increased number of appointments. And I said to Eric, I'm just not feeling him move quite as much, or I'm not feeling the baby move, because at the time we didn't know baby R was a little boy. And Eric said, don't worry about it. As long as you're feeling him move, Lynn said everything was going to be okay. And we went along our day. I went to work. The next day, we, cleaned the house, installed the car seat. We had our baby shower a few weeks before. I think I was like 35 weeks when we had our baby shower. We were, over 100 people in the room celebrating us and sweet baby R. And we ended up going to the hospital on 3 days later because I stopped feeling him move. And at that time, a doctor who I didn't know told me, your baby has died. You can deliver him now or you can deliver him later. And what I remember was Eric was screaming so loud that I couldn't process my thought. And I leaned over to him and I said, could you please stop? Because I need to concentrate. And it felt like to me when you're driving and you turn down your radio to know which turn you're going to take next. And I looked at the nurse and I said, what am I supposed to do? Do I get a C-section? And she advised me, and I'm really thankful for this nurse, who I also think will listen to this podcast. So shout out to my amazing nurse. She said, I think you want to go home and process this news, talk to your midwife, and make a plan with her because you know and trust her well. And that's exactly what I did. So that's how my family got started. Eric and I were practically newlyweds, and we were thrown into the depths of grief. And it was a really, really challenging way to start our marriage. It might not have been how we chose, but we don't always get to choose these things. So we did the best that we could with delivering our little boy. We did the best that we could in the hospital. There wasn't a step-by-step guide that we were given on what to do. And then the days and the weeks and the months and the years now following that were challenging. And our family grew. 5 months later, we conceived our next child, who is alive and healthy and well. I mentioned him, our 2-year-old little boy, Drew. So I'm a mom of two boys. And Eric and I have been through a little bit of the ringer, and we're thankfully 3 years later doing okay.
Thank you for
Oh, thank
sharing all
you.
that. And I'm
Yeah, thank
so
you for
sorry for
sharing
your
that.
loss.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Leanne.
Are you comfortable talking a little bit about what the reality of a late term loss looks like? For a lot of people, it's not something that's even on their radar until it unfortunately either happens to them or someone who's close to them. I'm really glad that the nurse had the wherewithal to be like, okay, let's like take a beat. We don't have to make any huge decisions yet. But what did those next few hours, days, weeks look like for you and your husband?
The clearest picture that I can paint, let me take a step back. A lot of people say, oh, I can't imagine that happening. But the reality is, you can imagine it. It's just really hard. And some people choose not to imagine it. So I'm going to paint the picture. We had our baby shower. We had all of the gifts, the nursery set up, the portraits of little cute baby animals hung on the wall. The car seat was installed the day before because we were kind of anticipating that he was coming. So when I say that we, not only Eric and I, but my parents who had helped bring over those gifts from the baby shower, my aunts and uncles, my siblings, everyone was blindsided. And so thankfully the nurse had the advice to go home and process, but it gave me a moment to make phone calls, to tell people the baby has passed away. We're going to go back into the hospital in 2 days and deliver. And it gave us space that we could answer questions without being inside of a hospital. I know that many bereaved families who have a late loss don't have that opportunity. So they're either in a medical emergency or facing some other challenges where they're not able to go home. I looked at that time, those 2 days between going home from the hospital and then delivering him, as I describe it as being robotic. I was going through the motions, pick up the phone, call this person, tell them the baby has died, hang up the phone, pick up the phone, call work, tell them I won't be coming in, hang up the phone, pick up the phone, call friend A, B, and C and say, can you please take the items out of the nursery? We don't want them to be all over the house, and put them in mom and dad's basement. Hang up the phone. So I hope that paints a clear picture of what that immediate day looked like. And then the following days, I really wanted to be outdoors. It was April. He was born on April 5th. So I had people coming, just showing up at our house with food. Thankfully, we only received 7 chicken parms, but for some reason the grief food is chicken parm. So when in doubt, chicken parm is great. But we had friends showing up, and everyone, I made them sit outside. I only wanted to be in the fresh air, and I wanted to talk about my experience. And to anyone who would listen, I really didn't have a filter. And that was really nice to just verbally expel what I needed to. And then 2 weeks later, it went really quiet. The text messages stopped rolling in. The chicken parms stopped arriving. Thankfully, we had like 6 in the freezer frozen waiting for us. But it wasn't easy. I went back to work at 6 weeks. And I remember sitting down. At the time, I was an executive assistant at MGH, and I loved my job. I was very proud of my job. And I remember getting an email that said, can you please schedule this meeting? And I was like, your meeting's stupid. My baby died. I don't want to do that. And I share that for people who are around grieving people, that what was once a passion or something that they enjoyed, everything is tainted. And it's not just like the yoga class, it's everything from a single email becomes challenging and mundane. And so I vividly remember on Halloween, which would have been 6 months later, somebody saying, Happy Halloween. And I looked at them and I burst into tears. And I did a pretty good job at work holding it together. I burst into tears because I was like, it's not a happy Halloween. I should have a little baby in a pumpkin. And he died. And of course, at that time, I was, pregnant with Drew because he came really quickly. And probably the hormones were out of control. But I just remember that like burst into tears 6 months later felt really, really raw. So that's what the early days looked for me. Some parents choose to take a lot of time off. Some parents take only at a full term birth, some parents take the full 20 weeks off to heal their body and do as best as they can to move forward. I took 6 weeks off and that felt really, that felt good for me and my husband. But I don't know, I have never been the same since in so many different ways.
Yeah. I'm curious how you navigated those early stages of the questioning. Did you go down
Mhm.
a lot of routes of why did this happen? What if, could we have done something? Like, did that play a role and how did that feel for you?
Yep. When I went home from the hospital, I was told sometimes babies just die. You can try again in 6 months. We do recommend waiting 6 months before trying. And at first, my midwife said, we do recommend a year. And Eric, who's a little older than I, said, well, that won't work. And so that's how Drew arrived at 5 months and 3 weeks. But I went home from the hospital with a folder of papers that I couldn't open it. We went home with a box that had a gown that was made from someone's wedding dress that was like an angel gown. And I didn't connect with it at all. Baby R had never worn that gown. We went home with his handprints, his footprints, and some other mementos, a lock of hair. And I just remember the booklet was really thick, like a thick booklet of how to be when your baby dies. And I never opened it. To this day, I know exactly where it is in my desk drawer and I haven't opened it. And what I did instead was I turned to Google and I knew that stillborn babies happen. I just didn't know how to find someone in my area who this had happened to. And so I researched like grief support group stillbirth in Google, and things that came up were national organizations and one local organization. So I reached out to everyone that I could, expecting to get responses back. And I heard from only a few, which surprised me that
That's unfortunate.
my cries for help went. And I guess I'm thankful that perhaps two responded loudly and said, We're here to catch you, because perhaps it's not quality, it's not quantity, but quality for my
Mhm.
case. But I
Yeah.
immediately heard back from the International Stillbirth Alliance, the ISA. They reached out and I was like, I don't really know what this is, but I'm glad to hear from another human that somebody heard my cries and responded. And at Empty Arms, I heard back via email very quickly. We have support groups. We're out of Northampton, which is about an hour away from my hometown and where I was physically sitting, sending those emails off of work. We have support groups. You can come have a cup of coffee on our couch. We're here to talk to you. I was like, wow,
Mm.
that's exactly what I need. I don't need to open this booklet. I don't need anything other than someone else who's been there to tell me what the heck I'm supposed to do next. And the third
Yeah.
bullet point that I want to mention is I went on a spiral on what could have happened to Baby R,
Yeah.
what possibly could have happened to him. Where did we go wrong? How did the system fail me? How did I fail me?
Mhm.
I felt like a failure, of course. I felt like I let everyone down. He was the first grandchild on both sides and so loved and so welcomed. And I was so embarrassed. So I thought, surely if I could give people an answer, oh, he had a knot in his cord. Oh, he had a heart problem, that it would make more sense for not only me, but for everyone. I ended up connecting with pathologists. They couldn't really give me a clear answer other than his placenta and his umbilical cord were abnormal from day one. And likely, could he have been, born healthy and alive at 36 weeks? Maybe, but we don't deliver babies at 36 weeks without major complications. And so for that reason, I'm very interested in placental and umbilical cord technology, which is very outside of my realm. It's like I'm, speaking astrophysics when I, start reading these research articles, but I'm very interested in patient education and learning more about how we can better visualize the umbilical cord and the placenta during pregnancy. And of course, that's evolved over 3 years since his demise.
That's so frustrating, I think, for so many people who have experienced loss or are having a hard time achieving a pregnancy, that so many times you're looking for answers. Like, you just need to know why something happened. And it seems like the medical community is just kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes this does. You're like that. Okay. It's like the worst thing you could tell me right now, because then in my head, I'm going to be like, oh, well, clearly they don't know it's something that you did wrong.
Yes. I will say, I never felt like, oh, maybe it was that salami sandwich I ate. Oh, because I did. Oh, it was maybe that, I stayed up too late one night. I don't even know. Maybe I had one extra cup of coffee. I never felt that. I felt more like I should have spoken up when I didn't feel his movements on that Thursday. And I could have called my provider, but the reality is, who knows what that outcome might have been. The provider's,
right,
office staff member might have said, "Oh, this happens. This is normal. Have a glass of cold water," which is a very, very typical thing to hear, but it's actually not the correct. If someone's experiencing true decreased fetal movements, they need to get checked out with their provider, not drink a glass of cold water. So
yep.
Who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Count the Kicks?
I am a fierce Count the Kicks advocate.
Yeah, they're awesome. And for any pregnant people who might be listening, they're a great org and tool. It's a really simple way to monitor your baby's movements. It's all expert backed. If you're a provider listening to it and you're not familiar with them, look them up, order materials for your office. Everybody should know about Count the Kicks.
And if a provider is in the state of Massachusetts, their materials are covered cost-free from the Department of Public Health and Mass. So it's a zero cost for providers and just an incredible tool for patients. Any pregnant person.
And the app is free to download.
Free, totally free. Yep. And in 30 languages, which
I know, it's
incredible. Amazing. Shout out Count the Kicks. Providing resources in so many languages and really accessible to all. Like we talked about, like I touched upon, there are mothers who are choosing between their prenatal appointments and going to work or being with their children, their living children. And Count the Kicks is a tool in the toolbox that I think is really accessible to all. I will say I learned about Count the Kicks after baby R's passing. I used Count the Kicks app during my pregnancy with Drew. I monitored his fetal movements, obviously, like almost too closely. And I'm really glad that I used it. What ended up happening, which I found is we delivered Drew via an induction at 37 weeks and 0 days. And it came to find out that Drew's placenta was actually unhealthier than baby R's. Oh. So I do like to credit Count the Kicks. Although no matter what that app had said, we would have had an induction at 37 weeks. Mm-hmm. It just felt to me like security that I had data showing that he at this many times at 6 p.m. every day. It felt empowering.
But I think this goes back to what you were saying too, where, you were sent home from the hospital with just this giant booklet that nobody has the emotional wherewithal or energy to dive into. Like, resources do exist to support families, but the onus shouldn't be on the families to find them. I mean, even if you hadn't reached out to all of the orgs you found when you were Googling. If you had just reached out to one and they were one of the ones that never got back to you, you could be like, okay, well, that's it. Then I'm on my own. So I know part of the work that you do now is helping to get these resources out to families in an easier way. Can you talk a little bit about how your own journey has inspired the work that you do now?
Thanks, Emily. That is so spot on what you just said. If I wasn't a dog with a bone finding resources for myself, I'm afraid I would be on the analogy I use is like I was in a pool floating on a pool raft, like on one of those like inner tubes all by myself. And then in the distance, there was another pool, another person floating on their pool inner tube. And now we floated towards each other and become connected. And now we're floating together, yapping about life and bereavement work, and it's my bereaved parents. We're all on these inner tubes, and then we find each other and we can float together through this pool of life, yapping about everything, living children, children who have passed away, work, you know, spouse issues that arise. I will forever stand on peer support as one of two things that helped me survive. And it was peer support that I found through Empty Arms and my therapist. I can't say, her name is Lily. Am I Lily? The two things that got me back on my 2 feet and upright was Empty Arms and Lily, my therapist, who I had never had therapy before. And now I don't know how I would function without it. Just to put a plug in there for that extra level of support. It's a tool in a toolbox that I definitely choose and made a choice to reach and grab. Peer support groups on Zoom, and the therapy, the one-on-one therapy. So once I was up on my 2 feet and pregnant with Drew, I was working at my previous job, being an executive assistant. I was at MGH, like I said, but again, the emails were coming in and I wasn't really caring about them as much as I could or should or used to be. So when Drew was born and I was supposed to go back to that job, I hugged them all, at 36 weeks pregnant and said, see you in 4 months, see you in 4 months. And come to find out, they all knew that I wasn't coming back. I didn't know I wasn't going back, but they all told me that they thought that, there's no way she's coming back. I was 6 weeks postpartum with Drew. I reached out to the director at Empty Arms, Carol, and I said, I'd love to give back to the organization that means so much to me. Do you happen to have any part-time work that I could help with? And she said, yes, there's something that I'd really like to do, Jen, that I think you can help me with. And that is expanding Empty Arms services outside of Northampton. And I said, let's talk. And she said, let's talk. So I started when Drew was 6 months old. He went to daycare 2 days a week, and it was perfect for me as a new mom. And it was perfect for Carol, who needed some extra help. And what I did was created what we call the hubs. So there's the Central Mass hub of parents that live where I live in Central Mass, the Eastern Mass hub, and then the Berkshire hub. So we started with just 3 hubs, which has now expanded to 5, but at the time it was just 3. And I started a planning committee for each one of the hubs, reaching out to our whole participant database saying, would you like to plan events in our local part of the state? Because up until I was working at Empty Arms last year, in-person support groups really only happened at the Northampton office that I'm currently sitting in now, which for those who don't know is towards Springfield, about 2 hours from Boston. So if there's a parent who joins us on Zoom from Boston area, they would have very rarely had the opportunity to come to an in-person support group in Northampton, just simply for how far away it is. So the hub work started so that we could have in-person gatherings, meeting at breweries, Bereaved Mother's Day events, things year over year, sporadically throughout the year that give our community members a space to grieve and to honor their children with other bereaved parents. What's interesting is when I reached out to the Central Mass Moms cohort, they told me the first thing that they want to do for a social gathering is to create bereavement resource bags to deliver into the hospitals in Central Mass. It was so beautiful. And so I was so amazed that this is what these, 7 moms wanted to do, and dads too, but really it was the moms who came, and we sat around a big round table and we created 50 bereavement bags to deliver throughout the hospitals. There's 4 labor and delivery units in Central Mass. And so in June of 2025, that's exactly what we did. We had mugs made up that say you're not alone. And inside the mugs, we placed no milk tea, which is if you deliver a baby after a certain period of time, it could be as early as 20 weeks, 22 weeks, you do lactate. And that's really challenging for a mom who doesn't have a baby. So we put no milk tea inside of the mug, which I didn't even know existed when I went home from the hospital. We have Cabo cream, which is also to reduce engorgement. And we put resource pamphlets from Empty Arms and other like organizations into the bereavement bags. There's a warm pair of socks. There's an aromatherapy kit. There's a microwavable handmade like rice pouch that you can either put in the freezer or in the microwave for cramps, because after birth you still have cramps just like every other, mom does. And I felt really proud that the 7 or 8 of us moms got together and created these bereavement bags, and we drove them around and delivered them to the hospital. And the brightest moment, that came from a really dark place was when a mom reached out to Empty Arms and said, I delivered my stillborn little boy at UMass in Worcester this week, and your info card was in my bereavement bag. And it was full circle. And now, she was able to come to support group the same month that her infant passed away versus me. I joined 3
That's
months
amazing.
later. Thank you.
That's
Thank you. Let's just hold a minute for how awesome that like full circle moment was.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and that's perfect. That's exactly what parents need. You are dealing with one of the most, if not the most traumatic experience of your life. Like I said before, the onus on finding support shouldn't be on you. You should be handed simple, easily comprehensible information, resources, tools that are actually helpful and useful to you immediately, not just something that might be sentimental for some, might not. It should just appear in your lap so that you can get connected with the people who can get you through this time.
And I love that the items you chose for the bag were things that weren't necessarily clinical or technical. It wasn't a pamphlet. It wasn't, medical literature. It really speaks loudly of a person who could say, I've been through this, and this is what I found comforting, and I'm sharing it with you. So I think there's a lot of comfort in that.
One thing that I forgot to mention is that a mom on the Central Mass hub said that she really liked these affirmation cards that someone had gifted her after her son Cash died during labor. And we looked at purchasing the exact same affirmation cards from Etsy, and they were like $22 a piece. And we're like, 22 times 50. No, we'll never be able to do this. So what we did was we ordered blank business cards with the Empty Arms logo on them. And the 8 of us moms wrote our own affirmations and signed it. Love Jen, Baby R's mom, Worcester, Mass. And so that the mom who was receiving these decks of handwritten affirmation cards could look and see, this mom is from Northampton, this mom is from Marlborough, this mom is from Boston, this mom is from wherever, but know that there are moms in the community that have experienced this and that we're waiting to come and have a cup of coffee with you and talk to you. So I think that those affirmation cards and the mug that says you are not alone were like so important. They're so much more important than that white wedding gown that Baby R never
Yeah.
wore. And I don't even know where it is today, to be honest. I think it's in a closet somewhere. But the affirmation card that says, so my affirmation card was, if I just get up and take a shower, I've done something today. Because early after my loss, just getting out of bed felt like running a marathon. Felt nearly impossible. And I don't mean those first 2 weeks when we had the rotating door of people. That was easy to get out of bed. I'm talking about the 2 weeks after when the texts and the visits started to dwindle.
So I know you mentioned about the hubs and how Empty Arms has gone from, being just the one office in Northampton to now these 5 hubs. But some of your programming is accessible to people outside of Massachusetts. Is that correct?
That's right. So 100% of the population that we serve are bereaved parents from 6 weeks miscarriage to an infant or toddler who's passed away at the age of 3. It's much more difficult to find certain types of support based upon the type of loss. So we provide support groups monthly to an array of different populations on that spectrum. So we have a miscarriage support group, we have a stillbirth support group, we have a support group for infant and toddlers. 15 of those happen monthly. 3 of them are open to the country, and that is the LGBTQ plus population, the BIPOC population. And for those who don't know, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, people of color. And the third is for those who've experienced a termination for medical reasons. And so those 3 populations of bereaved parents may have difficulty finding support in their local communities. And that's why we offer those nationwide, where we do find that a miscarriage support group is much more easily found throughout the country.
Can I make a suggestion for a 4th that needs to go national?
Yeah.
The loss in a multiple pregnancy. Those resources are very hard to find.
Interesting.
That one should definitely be a national group, because that's such a unique situation where you're continuing a pregnancy while also grieving a loss at the same time. Like, you don't fit in anywhere.
Interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because it's our twin loss support group, but multiple is a better word. So right off the bat, I think we have an area of improvement. And it's when one or more of the babies do survive. So we do offer that, but it is closed to mass. Well, I can bring that up. One thing about Empty Arms is that we are always evolving. Up until 2025, our stillbirth and infant loss group was combined. And we recognize that somebody who has experienced the loss of an infant that came home healthy and perhaps died from an accident, drowning, SIDS, is very different than a stillborn little boy or girl. So we separated those 2 groups out just 8 months ago. So we are always evolving and changing and adapting as we're able to continue to provide the best services for the population that we serve, the bereaved parents.
Something that you mentioned earlier about carrying the joy of your pregnancy after the grief that you were still carrying.
Yeah.
Do you have groups for that, for parenting after?
Yes, we do. So we have 2 different parenting after loss groups. One group is for parenting after your loss for those with a newborn born after their loss. And the other group is parenting for those who have living older children at the time of loss. And it could be older children. It might be a toddler. It doesn't have to be a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old. It's just parenting when you have living children. So when your pregnancy loss isn't your first child. And then we do have one for parenting a newborn or older. It could be a toddler, but a child who was born when your first passed away.
Yes.
And am I correct? You have a pregnancy after loss group as well, because that,
yes,
if anyone has been through that experience, it's totally different than being pregnant before a loss.
So I joined before I was an employee at Empty Arms. I went through the spectrum of Empty Arms support groups. So I did join, at the time it was the stillbirth and infant loss. Now it's stillbirth and neonatal loss group. But I joined the stillbirth group first. Then I actually skipped over the trying to get pregnant again support group. We're trying to conceive support group because Drew was quite the little surprise, like his older brother. I joined the pregnancy after loss group, and then I joined the parenting for those with a newborn after loss group. So I've attended as a single person, all four of the spectrum of groups that would be applicable to me.
That's wonderful. At all paths. Peer support is our jam too. I don't know how people get through this
Yeah.
without having that community around them.
Yes, yes, yes.
So there are two questions that we like to ask all of our guests. We'd love to get your thoughts on both of these. And the first is, what is one thing that you would say to someone who is just starting to grow their family?
I hate to come at this question with like a negative angle, but I think I have to. As exciting as growing your family can be, it can also be very challenging. So I think my piece of advice is to really know who you're starting the family with.
Oh, I like that. That's one we haven't gotten before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to go through. So make sure your partner, if you have one, or whoever is on this journey with you, is somebody that you can trust to get you through it.
Yeah, or finding your community, your people,
Yeah.
your support staff around you, who you're sharing your news with, all of that.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Eric and I said our vows for better, for worse, and recognizing that just because, I speak to everyone, know, who your partner is that you're choosing. It doesn't, you don't have to be married. I support everyone, but emphasis on the worst because we were barely married 8 months when, our really challenging days came came at us in our face.
Yeah. And sort of along those lines, what would you say to somebody who wants to support or be there for their friend or family member who's struggling to build their family?
Yeah. How to properly support someone when they're trying to build their family is different than when they're grieving the loss of a child. So I don't get this question often because I know the answer when somebody's grieving the loss of a child. Um,
You can answer
Yes,
both
I would
ways
like
if
to
you
hear the
want.
answer for both.
I think the best way I can answer this question is something that I've said to a girlfriend who at the time I was at her bachelorette party and she's 2 years older than me, so in her late 30s. And we were actually sitting in a hot tub and just, having a great time on a bachelorette. And she said, guys, like when I get married, we're going to start trying to have a family pretty quickly. And I said, whatever comes your way, I just want you to know I'm going to either be in the passenger seat or the back seat, wherever you want me to be. And I'm going to be right beside you. And that I think was the
Love
best
that.
thing at that moment that I could have said to her. And I think in reverse that someone could have said to me, like, I don't know what the future looks like for you, but I'm going to be right beside you.
I love that.
And how, if you look at it just from a bereaved parent's lens, how would that answer change?
I would say, I really like the words. I can only imagine how painful this is. If you want to share with me what you're really feeling like, I'm here to listen. I've only said that once or twice.
No, I love that because I think a lot of times you just kind of default to like, oh, I'm fine. Being like, I don't, is this somebody I can get into all of it
Yes.
with? Is this somebody who is emotionally ready to
Yeah.
receive what I'm going to dump on them? Sometimes it's just easier to be like, oh,
Yeah.
let's keep it.
But how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful when people would ask me, "No, how are you really doing? Don't just tell me you're fine. I know you're not fine. Your baby died. How are you really doing? What's
Right.
the one thing that's causing you the most angst today?"
And do you have any thoughts? Because, you mentioned your own experience. The first 2 weeks, you were surrounded by your community, and then everything kind of
Yeah.
seemed to stop. If we just kind of keep building off of that question, do you have ways for people or recommendations of things people can do to continue to show up?
I have an answer because it was something that someone did for me. I received a text message every single day for 365 days from a family member. How are you today? I'm thinking of you. And I'll never forget that for forever, that family member every single day, whether it was sunny out, whether it was raining, whether I was at work or not at work, I knew this person was going to check in on me. And if I was having a really terrible day, I had an outlet to just say, today really sucks. Or if today was okay, it was a safe space to say, I'm okay today. Today's fine. It's not, it's never going to be great, but I'm fine. So if someone very close to you, whoever is listening, has a loss, show up for them in the smallest way by sending a text message. I'm thinking of you. How are you really doing today? What's causing you angst today? Is there anything you need in terms of, well, don't ask, is there anything you need? Because that's a really hard question to answer. So I'm going to take that right back. But just saying, I'm thinking of you goes a long way.
That's amazing. And if that family member is listening, you're a rock star. I hope more people learn from what you've done, because that's such a really powerful way to remind somebody that they're not alone on days when you might really feel like you are.
1000%. Yes.
So before we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to share or talk about that we haven't asked about?
The main message that perhaps I'd like to share is to anyone listening who feels like advocacy work might be in their blood or light a little passion in them. And advocacy work, I mean, going to the state house and talking to legislators or going to different agencies and finding a voice to your story. I'm happy to connect with them and share the work that I've been able to do. It's quite fun. I've traveled to Washington, D.C. and gone to the Capitol building and spoken with legislators about stillbirth prevention measures. And that's felt really, really good. So happy to speak more to anyone about that at any time.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Sounds awesome. Definitely put links to Empty Arms so that people can get in touch if they need support.
That sounds really good. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Leanne.
Well, thank you, Jen. This was so lovely talking with you, as it always is. But thank you for sharing your story and about the amazing work that you are doing over at Empty Arms.
Thanks.
Yeah, I really enjoyed learning more about you and the organization, Jen. Thanks for sharing everything.
Thanks, Leanne. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week with more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, to learn more about our work. And please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support. And today we want to recognize and thank the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services, a First Fertility Center. Your partnership is vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone who is struggling to grow their family. And to the entire All Paths community, thank you for being here. It's an honor to walk with you on your journey.